The Guardians officially announced signing of Rhys Hoskins into the mix, and they're expecting a big year from Kyle Manzardo. Does that mean first base is settled long-term? Will other prospects be pushing their way into the picture in 2026 and beyond?
Tanner Bobby of the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Guardians fans? It is time for another edition of Locked On Guardians. Thank you for choosing to be here with us because we are the only daily podcast that talks about your Cleveland Guardians, the majors, the minors, and the draft. And we do it every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team, your undefeated Cactus League Cleveland Guardians. I'm Justin Lada, one of your two co-hosts for the last 4 years, and coming up on my 19th season covering the farm system as a prospect writer and editor for the Guardians.
And I am Jeff Ellis, your other host here. I've been here since Locked On expanded into baseball. Before that, I was national writer at Scout 24/7, focused on prospects and the draft. I want to thank you for making today's episode your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts, as well as a big shout out to all of our everydayers, all of our insiders, everyone who joins us, and anyone who might be new. I saw we gained quite a few new followers after the Hoskins kind of excitement. So anyone who's new, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, we're about 400 followers away from 6,000. So it would be cool if we can get there sometime early in the season this year. We'll see how that goes. But I know we also got a couple of Apple Podcast reviews, Jeff, if you want to get to those at some point during the show. We got a few new ones we got to thank people for, but we'll get to those on today's show, though. Later on, we got to bring you the news from Guardians Camp, and we'll tell you what stood out from Monday spring training action. We're going to get into this later in the show, but what does the future look like at first base for the Guardians? And starting off today's show, we'll talk about Rhys Hoskins being in the fold now and how first base shakes out in 2026. So I think, first off, Kyle Manzardo is still – I think he's still got to be in line for every day at bats. I think that's the most important thing here. I think based on, you talked about it yesterday, he was one of two hitters on this team that was above league average last year. It was him and Jose Ramirez, and Stephen Kwan was 99, so he was, right there. Those are the three guys in your lineup. It feels like you at least have some idea of what they're going to do, right? You don't know what Bo Naylor is going to do. He had a good day on Monday. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but the guys you kind of have an idea of how they're going to perform for the most part. It's Kwan, it's Jose, and it's Manzardo. You know what Kwan's consistency is going to be. We don't know what Manzardo's consistency is going to be, but last year they were very careful in platooning him. And he got some reps against lefties early on in the season, hit some home runs. I know he hit a home run off Cole Reagans, and that's great and all, but for the season, his numbers against lefties last year were not good, and they did platoon him. And they're going to have platoon options, obviously, now with Hoskins and Fry to combat that if they want to. But I think it's important for this team this year, for Manzardo, for him to get 500 plate appearances and see if he can be the guy that can be in the middle of this order for the next several years to come.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they deploy him. For those who are curious, he was an 83 WRC plus. We talk about WRC plus all the time. It means he was roughly 20% below league average when he was playing against lefties. He was a 119 versus righties, so roughly 20% above league average. I know I've seen some people in the comments doubt him and have some concerns, but I'll say this too. One of the things we talk about, one of the data points that's always very important to success is barrel rate. And we talk about barrel rate all the time. The more you barrel, if you can barrel and hard hit, good things come to you. Highest barrel rate on the Cleveland Guardians a year ago was Kyle Manzardo. Now, basically tied for second with Schneemann and Arias with Bo Naylor in third. So people out there might be like, okay, maybe that's not the most valuable. But, the point is that we have seen, for the most part, barrel percentage combined with a strong hard hit percentage. He had the third best, basically the second best hard hit percentage on the team behind Nolan Jones. That when you combine barrel and hard hits, good things will come. On top of that, let's talk about one of our other favorite stats to talk about all the time, BABIP. For a guy who hits the ball hard, he only had a 265 BABIP last year. So he was pretty unlucky. He actually had an unlucky year when you look at his overall level of performance and what he does. Now, he's not the quickest guy, so that can bring down. He's actually one of the slowest players in baseball. So I wouldn't be shocked if he's more of a 275 BABIP. But you don't see a lot of guys who aren't catchers who stick around that 265 range. So, and then I think the other thing for me, just as I hit all of the parts of this, is we talk about consistency. Consistency is such a key. Like, one of the things I find infuriating with Stephen Kwan is he is like, okay, first 2 months he's great, and then it's Jason Kipnis all over again. It's like, hey, once we get through June, you're going to be worthless for the next 2 months. Kyle Manzardo was terrible in May, but outside of that, he was above league average hitter every single month. He was amazing in July. That was his high point. He was great in March and April and July. And after that, he was closer to average. But for a team that had the offense that it had, having a consistent hitter who was about league average is huge. First half 102 WRC plus because of that bad May and the great March and April. Second half 126. So he really started to pick up.
July.
Yeah. And, that first half is BABIP, 239. Second half BABIP, hitting the ball hard, doing more good things, a 301. So, like, you can see even, like, how there was some of that luck because things like his walk and strikeout rate stayed consistent. His average shifted because he had some better batted ball luck, and his ISO was actually higher. His ISO was higher in the first half. So I think we're going to see more good things. I am sold on Manzardo. Just let him play, get out of his way.
Let Manzardo cook. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
I think you said that about Rhys Hoskins yesterday too, but now you're saying let Manzardo cook too. So
saying about both of them, honestly.
Yeah, a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Yeah, there's a lot of good things that can happen here. I actually kind of overlooked that. You're right. Manzardo was above league average every month except for the month of May. Now he did have some warts, in some of those months too. Like look at June, it was a 106, but his walk rate was 3.1%, which is ridiculous. There are some weird outliers there too. I think the big thing I'm looking for with Manzardo is like, can he take things to the next level? That means, facing lefties, and his OPS most months was like in the 700 range, which is fine. Like we'll take the above average WRC plus considering where this offense was a year ago. But I think you're looking for him to consistently be in that 800 OPS range, which is what a first baseman needs to have. You need your first baseman to be in the 800 range. He needs to work walks. He needs to show more power. And, he put the 14 pounds of weight on over the offseason, and they're saying that's going to help him. And that might not work at first base where he's already a bad defender. That's going to be the interesting thing. But I do want to see him play against lefties. And we mentioned this on Monday's show. With the presence of Hoskins and then Fry being able to play at first base again, you can have Manzardo play against lefties still, but you can move him down in the lineup, right? You can hit those other two guys higher in the lineup because they have more proven success against lefties, whereas Manzardo doesn't. Not that I'm comparing Manzardo to Jim Thome, but remember early in his career, Jim Thome was like hitting seventh against lefties and that was also because the lineup was just insane. But they benched him against like Randy Johnson and stuff early on. But again, that was because the lineup was insane. This lineup doesn't have the flexibility or the affordability to do it, but you can still protect him a little bit by having him down there. I'm most interested too. I am with you on Manzardo. I think it's going to be a good year for him. I feel good about Hoskins. I weirdly feel good about David Fry too. I think an off season where he's not just focused on rehabbing his elbow.
We have our disagreements.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are like on the fence on David Fry. Like I think rehabbing a last off season from Tommy John got in the way of that. I know it doesn't get in the way of the hitting, but he was very focused on that last year. And he didn't have a normal offseason, especially because of the facial injury this offseason too. So I think that'll help him. I'm most interested in figuring out who the heck is going to be playing the best defense at first, because like there's a real good chance they are punting first base defense this year.
Hoskins' metrics weren't terrible last year, so we'll have to wait and see. At the end of the day, though, like how much does it? I guess we saw how much it mattered, right? Like when they put the ball in the postseason, that could have been the difference between advancing or not. So I guess I shouldn't say that, but yeah, it's not ideal where they are defensively. Kyle Manzardo's muscle isn't the most muscle added. We have learned this offseason, but it's still a significant amount, and it is definitely this year's. Casey Kochman got LASIK and whatever we want to call it. That every year we see these stories that are just kind of bunk and don't matter that much. But I mean, I still believe in just the one thing we will have to see, though, is like I've been pouring through the data. It's like over the years, it's like after that breakout year, that's a lot of times kind of the high water mark and or the mark where guys sit at. So it's like, is he going to be the, going through data so far, it's a very beginning piece, but so it's 60% of guys kind of peak after that initial full season, and then they come down a little bit. A few guys elevate. Can he be one of the few guys that elevates?
Yeah, unless you're really good, that is the case. You got to be, the future Hall of Famers, the Freddie Freemans, or the guys that are just, kind of stars in this league. I don't know if we can expect that from Manzardo, but this will be a big year in figuring out where he goes next, because he's got Hoskins now, and there's CJ Kayfus we have to talk about, and there's actually other first basemen in the system that are worth talking about for the first time in quite some time. We'll get into that next. Maybe you're somebody that likes chaos, but there's no place for chaos in the workplace. You get deadlines stacking up, your inbox is overflowing, and that position that you have to fill, it's still sitting open. So when the pressure's on, you need the right hire. That is a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed, Sponsored Jobs helps you reach people who actually fit what you're looking for. That's skills, experience, location. You're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post and applies. And in this little minute we've been talking here, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. Spend less time searching, more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Less stress, less time, more results when you need to cut through the chaos. It's a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. If you're a listener to this show, you get $75 in a sponsored job credit to help you get the premium job status your job deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Go to Indeed.com/podcast right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Go to Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Baseball is back and the Guardians are undefeated, which means you're here talking about that, of course, in spring training and Rhys Hoskins and all those fun things. Lock in by joining the Everydayer Club. I get you ad-free access to all the Locked On Guardians shows and our group chat over on Discord. And for the next week, this week only, you can use promo code SPRING to get yourself a free month of the Locked On Guardians Everydayer Club. That's lockedonguardians.supercast.com. Check the link in the show notes for that. I know there's some people who are, I don't know how big of a portion of the audience or fan base this is, but there are some people who are a little bothered by the fact that CJ Kayfus probably gets squeezed out. Like, does he almost have to play the outfield all year this year? Because you have Manzardo, who I think you're hoping takes a step forward this year and shows you something, and he ends up being here for the next 5 years, whatever it is, at first base. And then you have Kayfus, and then behind him you have Ralphy Velasquez, who's exciting to talk about. Like, Kayfus almost becomes a trade asset, or maybe he's got to focus on the outfield more. Like, there's no first baseman in AAA, so it makes the most sense for Kayfus to go to AAA and play first base, I think. But it might behoove him more to play the outfield to see if he can work in that mix again this year. Because otherwise, I'm not really sure where this goes for him. He's the guy who has the most precarious future, I think. But then again, maybe Manzardo doesn't take that next step. Maybe CJ Kayfus does. Like, Manzardo definitely has more raw power and exit velocities, but Kayfus has a little more contact ability, which is interesting because that's not how we would have viewed Manzardo a couple of years ago. And we know Kayfus for sure is the best defender at first base, for as much as that matters.
Yeah, I think it's a hard situation with Kayfus, just being real honest, because we had some people in the comments bring up like, well, what, and the bottom line is it was a small sample, but in that 140 plate appearances, the underlying metrics were pretty terrible. Like the data, like his performance was close to league average, but he whiffed a lot. He K'd a lot. He didn't hit the ball hard. He chased. He didn't barrel. Like, the only thing that really popped even like close to average, well, barrel percentage was almost league average, I think, and then launch angle sweet spot was the only thing that was above average. And as listen, that data point is worthless. Like, because we know launch angle sweet spot doesn't really matter. Like it doesn't. We have gone through enough players.
Not on its own. Yeah.
No, I don't even think it matters at all. I think you can just ignore it. Like it doesn't provide anything interesting. So Kayfus came up and was fine. If he hadn't exhausted his eligibility, it'd probably be like 7th or 8th prospect in the system for me, somewhere in the back half of the top 10. But, and I know it's going to upset some people, and there are ardent supporters, because he's been really productive in the minors. He's got a good arm. He fields well. I think he could play outfield. I think he could play first base. But when you come up and he didn't light the world on fire. He was just okay. And then the underlying data isn't just not good. It's bad. You combine those two things. Nothing is guaranteed for a guy like that. So it really comes down to, for a player like him, he's got to really show it if he wants to make this roster. But I think there's a better than average chance that no matter what happens, he starts the year. And I would honestly, I'd put Brito at first base in AAA just because I don't think he makes this roster either, just to get him some reps there. And I would have Kayfus concentrate on the outfield, because I do think he can handle the outfield. I think he's got enough arm. I think he could play left or right. I think there's enough there. I think he's developing well. I think he's a good success story so far. Just got to see a bit more from him, just in terms of some of the metric stuff. There's some holes in that game that are going to hold him back, which is what we warned when he came up. But I think he's a good prospect. I think he's an interesting player.
Yeah, I agree. I think you want to have him play the outfield a little bit more. I think everybody knows what he could do at first defensively. He's solid. I think you're right. He can handle left field. Not a problem there. I think overall, if you play him in the outfield too, you're increasing the trade value a little bit too, because he's not just pigeonholed at first base. So you're not thinking, well, he's just a first baseman. Like, because there's a very good chance he is Jake Bauers-ish. Like, that's kind of who he's kind of falling into. A guy who has some pop, but not a ton. He's a good defender at first. But the thing is, like, Kayfus chases a lot more than I think we would have liked. The contact rate wasn't where we wanted it to be. There's just some things in that profile that I don't think ended up being where I thought they would be when he was drafted, when I saw him in the lower minors. So, I think for Cleveland, the best route for him going forward, like you said, is to play some outfield. And, I wouldn't be surprised if the best route for him in the future is for them to use him as a trade option. I don't think he's going to be a guy that you can use as a headliner in any trade, but he could be a secondary piece in a trade, and I would be okay with that. It gives him a chance to go elsewhere, and I think they have other options in Cleveland with Manzardo, and then, of course, Ralphy Velasquez. The one thing I think is interesting that Keith Law pointed out, I think we might have brought this up in an earlier episode, I'm not sure, but Ralphie had a very great season last year. He acclimated himself to AA very well. As we've cautioned before, I think we've cautioned last year on the show when he made his promotion to AA, that when you go play in Reading, Pennsylvania, you are going to light the world on fire if you have any kind of hitting skill. Like, there's a good chance you listening might have been able to hit a home run in that ballpark last year or any year. And Ralphie had a great beginning of that. If you strip out those like 4 games or 5 games he played in, he was, a little more average-ish in AA. It was a 750 OPS. It was a 134 WRC plus. Like, he hit, he walked, the power didn't come on as strong without that week in Reading. Aside from that, though, I'm still pretty excited. Like, the strikeout rate was very strong. The walk rate was strong. He continued to hold on to those games when he got to AA. He was one of the youngest players in AA, only 20 years old for his first time. I thought he did very well, and we'll see what he does over the course of a full year there. But I'm still pretty excited about him, even if you want to take that out of his stat line for that first week.
Because essentially, for those who didn't quite follow there, he came up and absolutely destroyed once he went to Reading, and the rest of the year he was closer to average.
That was his first exposure to AA. That's when he got promoted. Yeah.
Once you get past Reading, which is a pitcher's park, in Philadelphia, the pitching face wasn't great, or hitter's park, and the pitching face wasn't great. So it does kind of put a little bit of a cool down on, like, the overall numbers, because then the overall numbers, because this is again the danger of small sample sizes, that you pull out that one weekend, he was good, he wasn't spectacular anymore. Because that one weekend was such a high percentage of the damage. I think he's still a very good prospect. He's still a top 3 to 4 prospect in the system. He's, I think at least 4. I don't really see a way he's farther down than 4th, but I could see some pathways to people having him 4th because of position, because of some of the other data. But he's a fun, exciting prospect. One of the most interesting hitters in the system, and just keeps developing, coming along for them.
Yeah, it could be one of their best first-round picks in quite some time, especially from the high school ranks. All right, we'll talk more about Ralphy, expectations for him this year, when he will see his major league debut. Also got to talk about some other guys at first base. The Guardians, for some reason, paid a lot of attention to first base in the draft last year. We'll talk about those guys. We'll talk about what stood out from Monday's action in Arizona. And the Guardians signed a very unusual undrafted free agent. We have to bring that up later in today's show, so stick around. Got all kinds of Guardians content coming your way this year. We've got regular episodes. We've got some bonus coverage. We've got some reaction videos to games, to moves, to news we'll have coming out there. So hit the bell on YouTube so you get reminders that all those have been posted so you never miss that. And keep auto downloading on all of your audio platforms so that way you keep us in the feed as the weather eventually does get warmer. I know it just hit us with some snow in Northeast Ohio.
Same here.
Up in Wisconsin too. So eventually you'll want to get outside and do spring things. Get a little taste of it. But if you keep us in your feed, you can take us wherever you go on all your audio platforms as well. So I think Ralphy Velasquez, I think it's a very fair expectation to think he'll be in Columbus this year. You know, he spent a portion of last year in AA. If things go well, I think he'll get to AAA this year. And that's very exciting, you know, and he's not going to be Rule 5 eligible until next December. So he's got 2 more years. He's got all 26 and all of 27. That's going to make things very interesting for how the Guardians decide to play this. They've got time to see if Kyle Manzardo, like what he is. Do you think there's a world too where both those guys fit on the roster? That's another question I have too.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing though. I've seen some people talk about Ralphie could be up in late. I would be shocked if he is up in September. Like I don't see a pathway to it. They're going to play that. They don't need to promote him that quickly. I mean, Kayfus is. I don't want anyone, and I can already see the comments. I don't want anyone thinking, that he's not a good. He's still a good prospect. You got to give Kayfus opportunities. He's a solid. Like I said, he'd probably be like 8th, 9th on my prospect list if he qualified. There's a chance for an average to slightly above average regular. That's incredibly valuable. I mean, we have watched this team struggle to find that. If he's that in the outfield, then he's going to be one of the best outfilders they've had for the last decade. If he can be an above average outfielder for the next 5 years, that's one of the best guys they've had in a decade. But he's a first baseman. Manzardo, they're not paying Hoskins a ton, but if Hoskins hits, I just don't see a pathway there. So, I mean, I think you could have. I think Ralphie will probably be a pretty solid defender overall. Honestly, he's a pretty good athlete, solid arm. I mean, I don't know if it'll ever happen, but a lot of us thought he could play the outfield.
He did play a little. I mean, he has dabbled out there. Left. Yeah, he made that spectacular home run robbing play in 2024 in Lake County. And I was like, it's hard to make those plays if you're not capable defensively, you're not athletic. So I think you're right. He can do it. So, man, if you had to choose between the two, it's going to be Ralphie. Manzardo isn't leaving the infield, whether it's DH or first base. The only guy that can make it happen is Ralphie. So I could see next year, I could see 2027, Ralphie and Manzardo on the roster together if things go well, especially since Manzardo's still pre-arb. That would be very interesting to keep him in the mix, but I can't see it this year. Even if he's that good, I don't know where you put him. And if he surpasses somebody else, that means your roster maybe is struggling a little bit, or your record struggling, in which case you're not going to burn the service time, considering he's got he won't be turning 21 here until I think he won't be turning 21 until May. And he's got, again, this whole year and all next year before he's Rule 5 eligible. But it's exciting. I think this has a chance to be one of the Guardians' best offensive first-round picks. I'm trying to think, who was their best offensive first-round pick in the last decade? I mean, it's kind of Bo Naylor right now, but
I mean,
Lonnie Chisenhall, that was like 09.
That was one of my first drafts. I think that was 09.
Lindor.
So Lindor was 12, or no, 11. 11 was Lindor. 12 was Naquin. I mean,
year and then flamed out, like your theory suggests.
It's they it's the Zimmers, the Fraziers. it's a lot of guys who haven't quite got, and that's the problem you say like in the last decade, because honestly, like half of that decade is guys who, you know, in a regular 5-year developmental cycle still just haven't had those opportunities yet. You know, it's like he
15
you know,
years then.
yeah. I mean, I would have to look at the list. I don't have the top of my head, and this is where I'm really bad, is because I usually forget names. But, you know, it's the same thing though. I'll say it's like you go back, if you say 15 years, then it's Lindor. But like when I was sitting there doing the rankings for their best first rounders in the history of this org, like sitting seventh, somewhere between 7th and 9th was Kelly Gruber, who I didn't even realize this team drafted in the first round, because I always remember him with the Blue Jays, like when I was a kid. And that was under the old Rule 5 rules where they were able to steal him away. Another one of the many Rule 5 losses this org has had, where Trevor Stephan is the greatest Rule 5 pick in history. And that's not to denigrate him, but this is a guy who had three good years. They have lost so much in that. But yeah, they have not had a lot of success there. So hopefully it's Ralphie who can pull forward.
I think it's if I think it will be Ralphie, but yeah, aside from him, like the recent history, it's been Bo Naylor and Lindor, and then before that, like Ronnie Chisenhall. Yeah. So doesn't say a lot about their first round hitting prospects. The Guardians did draft multiple first basemen in the draft a year ago, which was very odd, Jeff. They had Nolan Schubart, who was an outfielder in college, but is kind of moved over to first base. He is a large human being with a lot of power, but there's a lot of issues with that swing. Riley Nelson, who comes from Vanderbilt, who has some interesting stuff going on, but not like, again, we're talking more of the Casey Kochman, Jake Bowers type first baseman. And then there's Anthony Martinez from, it was in California, right? Was it UC?
I think it was UC
Irvine. UC Irvine, yeah, who I don't think the profile is all that exciting, but very odd to see them take so many first basemen a year ago. Schubart's got light tower power.
That. Like, you know, the Naranjos. I mean, I would, you know, they've taken a lot of like first basemen in recent years.
So strange. Yeah, and there's Luis Morejo, who's in the system too. Who you know I liked 2 years ago. The data was interesting, but boy, that fell apart very fast last year.
He's very young though. I'm still gonna say he's a very young guy at his level. I'm not gonna give up on him. I still think he's a lot of fun. He's interesting player to track. Martinez, I talked to my buddy Taylor Blake Ward. He said he hit the ball hard, but I looked at the data and he didn't. But like, he's known for like having some ability to, I think, socket, hit some line drives. Small school guy, maybe they can find something there. And Nelson, a lot of people like the swing, like the performance. Just feels like he's like my definition of that guy where it's like you're playing too safe, because it feels like he has to be exactly who he was in college with no drop off for him to turn into a successful major leaguer. And we just don't see that happen a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, and Morejo, like you said, there's a lot ahead. He's a young guy who's got really interesting metrics. The strikeout was an issue last year. So we'll see what happens when he probably starts in Lake County. But I don't know. You got Schubart, who might start there. It's going to be interesting to see what that pans out. I wanted to talk some draft, too. We don't have time today. I want to get into what happened in the show and the game. And I want to quickly mention Wes Burton. So what happened in Monday's game? Tanner Bybee could have thrown more strikes, 32 pitches, 17 strikes. I'd like to see more strikes overall from him, but he was 93, 96 with his fastball. That's really good for his first start. Probably what he'll be for the year, maybe a little bit more. 18 inches of induced vertical break on the fastball he got up to. I know he's been like closer to 20 over the offseason, so that's really good. Tim Herron could not spot his fastball, but his curveball was great. Got a lot of swings and misses and threw strikes his curveball. That was weird. Another good day for Chase DeLauter. I saw the game wasn't on TV, so I was following on StatCast as I listened, and I saw the pitch that he hit for a double, and I was like, it was like up and in. I was like, how did he turn on that? And then I saw the video, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. So Chase DeLauter, man, has looked really good so far. I'm excited for him. Jose should have had 2 home runs. They goofed the first call up, but he hit one later anyway. And then Bo Naylor also turned around a 98-mile-an-hour fastball for it was like 108-mile-an-hour double. So that was good to see. So I think a lot of good things happened in this game, and the Guardians, having quality at bats. Guys are hitting the ball hard. I know the environment will juice some of that, but I'll take it. And every day Chase DeLauter plays and gets through it healthy is also a good day.
Agreed. And I want to save us some time to talk about Burton. I think you've kind of discussed everything here that needs to be discussed. So I say we dive into the fun of this new, really, like I said, kind of crazy addition because of what he is.
It is a weird thing. And Jeff, like you always point out, it's always interesting to see when they make interesting signings as far as like out of nowhere or weird profiles. So Wes Burton is a giant of a man. He's 6'8", bounced around at multiple schools. He went to Ole Miss for 3 years, had the COVID year exception. Then he had Tommy John. He pitched Indiana. Then he had Tommy John, missed 2024, went to Tulane as a graduate student. So not a ton of college experience for a guy who pitched at 3 different schools. But he gets his fastball up into the mid-90s, 23 inches of induced vertical break. And again, for reference, like Gavin Williams, Garrett Cole get about 20, and that's considered good. Now, IVB alone doesn't do a whole lot. Like it's got to be other things, but he also gets 7 feet of extension, which we know the Guardians love extension monsters too. And also think it's interesting too that Burton is a alternate on the Great Britain World Baseball Classic team. So if they need to replace a pitcher, he could be called on too. But yeah, he's an undrafted free agent, 25 years old, who has no pro experience, has limited college experience, pitched some on the Cape. Very interesting profile. He could be depth, or he could be a guy that just is a interesting developmental guy.
Yeah, I mean, think about 7 feet of vertical extension for a player who's 6'8". Like, I mean, that means that everything is just like that. It's their second kind of massive human. Now, anyone who's followed me for a while knows I'm always concerned with massive humans just because they tend to break down more. They have a harder time repeating their delivery.
Jeff is afraid of giants.
I don't know. It just the mechanics of giants is rarely clean. But again, they're signing him for a small contract. In that case, like, this is exactly when you throw those darts. Like, throw the dart at a guy like this, because I mean, honestly, it's like he's already 25. He's older. We mentioned Ole Miss, Indiana, and Tulane is where he finally, because he was hurt and he never got chances to pitch. So there's not a lot of wear and tear on the arm. Cleveland should have some opportunities here to. He's a fun, interesting arm. Go check him out. A little bit of crazy on the mound as well. So that's always fun too.
Yeah, a little bit of James Karinchak, a little bit of Doug Nikhazy. Very interesting. Also throws I think he looks like Trey Savage too from that arm slot. So that's always interesting. But also played at Ole Miss the same year they won the national championship when Dylan DeLucia was the most outstanding player on that team. So, he's got, some friends in the system. So that'll be good to help him out. And maybe Dylan DeLucia is the one that said to take a look at him. He certainly is much bigger than DeLucia and is very interesting on the mound. All right. Thanks for tuning in today. We do appreciate you guys hanging out with us, talking all these things that are happening this week with the Guardians, between spring training performances, free agent signings. Make sure you subscribe, follow Locked On Guardians, get the latest episodes. Check out the Everydayer Club, get that free month using promo code SPRING to get Discord access and more. Tomorrow's show, Jeff, I think we're going to debate some prospect rankings. We're gonna try to build our own top prospect rankings for the Locked On Guardians show this year, the consensus one, and I think tomorrow we're going to start debating that, and we'll also obviously get you covered for Gavin Williams' first start in spring training.
We want to thank all of you for rating and reviewing, joining us, all of that. We'll give those iTunes shout outs tomorrow, and go Guardians, go.